All right, we're back to catching up with the best of 2025, and we're getting close to the end of these best of the month videos that I'm catching up on with the top 10 albums of November. Pretty straightforward list here. Some of the absolute best of the year, as is kind of customary for this that time of year. I think the thing to note was that there was obviously a shock of quality in November and December. Otherwise, this is what the top 10 albums of November look like. Insane quality across the board. I had to leave things out. You'll remember years ago these lists used to be 20 item lists, and there were very few months in 2025 where I could have put up 20 options, but this was one of them because it was a good November. So we'll start at number 10 with Bezdan's Upon the Altar. This is a thrash metal band from Croatia, a black thrash metal band, a death thrash metal band, and one that leads with the riff. It's just quality riff focused thrashing extreme metal. It's a tradition that should be upheld, and it's one that still has blood in it. It's just that we need more people who are just obsessed with the riff and want to cut them as fast as possible into an interesting shape. And I think this band does a pretty good job of maintaining kind of the old school quality of that throughout this record. Um, it's a little uneven in terms of style. There are some black speed metal songs at the end. There's some death thrash metal songs at the start, but it all comes together eventually for a cool debut. At number 9, we have an Armenian melodic black metal band in Ildaruni. Obviously, they're heavily influenced by Swedish black metal. I think that's kind of obvious enough in terms of their style and their sound, but there's also some interest from the Greek side of that, the Greek black metal interest, and what I mean is that there aren't necessarily mid-paced, doomed kind of songs that resemble heavy metal on this album, but rather that the whole thing takes some tropes and ideas and repurposes them for this epic. And it's a really brilliantly like illustrated and written album. I think that the actual lyrics are substantial. I think the theme is awesome of this record. I don't know that they got enough praise for this album, but it was one of my favorites of last year in terms of melodic black metal that was attempting to do something that was old but new in a pretty cool way, and it was kind of a leap in quality on the most of the way there record that they put out previous. When I'd initially written about Porto, Portugal-based black and death metal band The Ominous Circle, I remember people reacted immediately. They were very excited to hear about a new album. They were excited to hear that it was great, and I think that enthusiasm for something that is essentially like old school death metal mixed with dissonant death metal, and it all kind of works together. It's pretty impressive that they made that happen. It's a modern sound, but it's a classic sound. It's not everything that they do is to my taste exactingly, but I think they did something pretty cool with this record, and it's the kind of thing you can pick up and listen to it again and again because of the quality and the kind of cyclical nature of the track list. It's pretty stellar stuff and worth recommending here. Another band that definitely has their fans here at number 7 is Yellow Eyes Confusion Gate. This is like an interestingly cumulative record. It's definitely doing something different. It's more aggressive. It's less atmospheric in some ways, but like more dynamic in others. It's challenging. It's like erratic and irrational, like a lot of Yellow Eyes material is, as kind of post-metallic black metal, but also a little bit melodic, but also a little aggressive. They're pulling into this ideal here on this record that is substantial, and I think that a lot of people expect bands from New York from the certain era where they emerged in terms of avant-garde or modern black metal, kind of just throw shit at the wall and call it art. But I think there's actually a statement in here and something that is worth uh, like pursuing in terms of repeated listening and some like exposure to this music will generate some feeling eventually, and that's not something I can say for most black metal released these days. Death Hail is one of those bands that were around in the late '80s in Chile, and people noticed, and they definitely existed, and they were trying to do a thing. But a lot of those early releases they were not great. They were just kind of figuring out how to play. They were figuring out how to record. They were kind of doing it themselves, and they were participating. But I don't know if they hit us with like a real classic right out the gate. It took a couple of tries. We got some minor releases, and I think they folded. They came back, and this second full length album it really makes good on the primal interest of the band. What I mean is like where they came from, the late '80s, and it makes good on the Black Death of the late '80s in a way that is it's a thrill. It's intense, and it has that spirit of that era that is old school. So for me, that was something I was excited about from the start. I was glad to hear that Death Yell were still around and still making good music, and I feel like they put together a solid record that's worth spending time with. So, Brisbane, Australia-based epic heavy metal duo Fate's Hand return with a full-length album, Steel, Fire, and Ice, and it's one of the best traditional heavy metal records of the year of 2025. It's the kind of riff writing, songcraft, and personality rich heavy metal that interested me in the genre in the first place. But they've obviously amped up their delivery of it in a way that is aggressive and maybe almost deceptively aggressive, where you're not going to expect that there are like extreme metal undercurrents to some of what they're doing that would have fit on like a Dissection album, but it's still traditional epic heavy metal and going for fantastical heroicism in the way that they presented it. It's an exceptional record and one that I didn't see enough people just like uh, losing their shit over in 2020, at the end of 2025. Now, to be fair, I didn't end up, spoilers here, I didn't end up putting Phobocosm's Gateway on my end of the year list as far as I recall, because it's basically what they've described it as left. I'll paraphrase. It's leftovers from the ideas from the previous album that were realized for this full length album and kind of put together from songs that were either previously written or written during a different stage in their kind of life as a band. So they're moving on from this sound, and well, maybe not the sound. They're moving on from that first period of the band into a new one by finishing up all this material and realizing it here on this album. Not a very long album, but a very good one if you're a fan of immolation-esque death metal, things that are influenced by Incantation and Morbid Angel, and the extremes where that can go. It's a really solid, like atmospheric, but still kind of technical and engrossing death metal that is very much my kind of thing. As a huge fan of all that I've mentioned here, and there are a couple of slower, doomed pieces on here that are special, I think. So cool to see them kind of tying off that loose end. But to me, it felt like, well, this isn't necessarily the big foot forward. It's kind of the last step out of the portal into a new one. California-based progressive death metal quartet Void Ceremony released Abditum in November, and I think I wasn't really sure if I wanted to hear another Void Ceremony album after the last one. It wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good. It's just there was such a focus on shredding and experience and movement. It's like Unquestionable Presence, but they took out the weird soul and put in some bad late '80s shred, and I'm just not a fan of that when it doesn't have a purpose or a spike of energy. And I felt like Abditum does better for Void Ceremony in terms of focusing on the weird soul of the experience, the strange movement of it, the I guess the engrossing experiential passage through these pieces, as they're very highly skilled in what they do, but they give you something to follow. They give you a thread that you want to keep pulling on. And so that's kind of the appealer. At number 2, we have The Conquering Darkness. This is a debut full length album from Malefic Throne. This is a United States based death metal band, and one that features the vocalist from Morbid Angel, the drummer from Origin, and many other things, as well as Gene from Angel Corpse and Perdition Temple. Now, you can tell this is kind of the product of these people and their collective knowns, and in a way there's a heavier focus on groove than you might find in Angel Corpse. They've made this all about the riff, and something that I think is comparable to like Centurion's early releases or Nox, in that it's all about the intense attack of the riff as an athletic and acrobatic feat, but also something that is just like exciting to listen to. It's very high energy, it's full of adrenaline, it's absolutely brutal most of the time. But there are some products of their interest in groove and kind of groove metal that inform some of the later pieces, that chops it up and breaks up some of that momentum so that it's not like fully liquid and flowing like Nox's full length album. So great record. Not the best of all time in this style, but obviously one that is notable. And like I said, you'll see it on my end of the year list. The Womb of the World is easily one of the best records of 2025. It's easily one of the most impressive works from Crixcore. There's sort of a paradigm shift in their own work that had occurred or in the last EP and album, and now it's continuing to morph into something bigger and more expressive and challenging. I think it's so interesting that this record manages to be so dramatic and surreal, and but still challenging and conveying a feeling that is very specific but all encompassing as the album weighs over time. Brilliant album, easily one of my favorites in recent memory, just overall, and an artist that seems to only grow with each work in a way that is substantial. I don't know how they top the size and the focus of this, or if they need to, but this was just a huge record that sort of restored my faith in this, in 2025 at all, in terms of finding something that I'll remember that's going to feel substantial in the future. So anyway, a big endorsement from me